Is January the 24th, 2008. We are at the Air and Military Museum of the Ozarks in Springfield, Missouri. Today we have the privilege of interviewing Darwin Walker. Also assisting today, my name is Warner Bullock. Assisting today is John Aldridge, Tom Clark, and Wayne Warner. Good morning, Dar.
Good morning.
We appreciate you taking the time to be here today and letting us learn of your military history.
My pleasure.
First of all, let's get a little background on you. You were raised where?
Sioux City, Iowa.
Sioux City, Iowa. You grew up there in the same town until you went into service.
Right.
And your mom and dad were there.
Right.
And did you have any brothers and sisters?
I had a sister who's passed away.
She passed away. Was she younger, older?
9 years younger.
9 years younger. So you were almost like a dad to her at some point, I would imagine.
I reckon.
When did you enter the military service?
1937.
1937, so you were the country was just coming out of the recession.
Right.
Can you comment on that? Was it tough? How'd you get along? Did your dad have a job?
Well, my dad was employed the entire Depression. Things were pretty tough. And National Guard didn't have any. I joined the National Guard. National Guard didn't have any trouble getting people. They paid a dollar a meeting.
$1 a meeting during a recession.
Yeah, that was a big buck.
How often did you have to go to drill?
Every week.
Every week, $1 a week to go.
Yeah.
Plus a uniform and a warm place to have a meeting, probably.
You're right.
In the Army National Guard.
Yeah.
Right. 1937. Did you have a feel that things were not going well? That there's probably going to be a war shortly? Did you have a feel for that at all?
I think that at that time, most people were worried about day-to-day survival.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't really committed to anything. That was up to the government, I guess.
Right. Even though the storm clouds were in Europe and in the Pacific,
I think you're right.
Staying alive and getting a meal on the table.
I think they were just
right. When did you join? Go to active service?
February. Let me see. February 10th, 1941.
1941, but you joined the National Guard, I think you said earlier, in 1937?
Right.
All right, so you had about 3 years or so
right.
duty. 1941.
I was already a corporal.
All right, in 3 years, and you went active duty early 1941 before we declared war on either Japan or Germany.
Yep.
Where did you go?
On the 20th of February, we went to Camp Claiborne, Louisiana.
What for?
34th Division.
34th Division.
We were activated. We went there to train. We were issued carbine rifles and M1 rifles and machine guns.
Why did they activate you if that was several months before the...
I don't have any idea. You have to ask FDR.
Well, that'll be hard to do, but if I ever see him, I'll ask him. Was anybody in your family in the military before you were?
No.
So this was a totally new experience for you.
Yep.
You had some experience as a corporal. You went to Louisiana. And what did you do from February of 41 till, say, December of 41 at Pearl Harbor time? Train?
Yes, we trained. Like I told you, we got new equipment. We trained. And then just before Pearl Harbor, our battalion was sent to Lake Pontchartrain Beach. And I was by that time, I was a first sergeant. And I fell our company out, and the company commander come out and told us that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. And we were trucked to New Orleans, and I put we camped at the waterworks, and I put half of my company there and half of my company at the Huey Long Bridge. Our mission was to protect the waterworks and the Huey Long Bridge.
And even though you were in New Orleans, a long way from any of this stuff, there was a concern, a genuine concern.
Oh, yeah.
That,
Yeah, we were down there. The Japs were going to come up from the south and blow up that bridge, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
right. How many men did you have, were you first sergeant to?
I think it was 208.
Were they all out of Iowa?
No, we got some draftees while we were down there. I don't know how many. I don't remember. We got some, not many. Most all of them from the Midwest.
From the Midwest.
Yeah.
Step back just a second. When you were activated early 1941, was that a surprise? Did you know it was coming? Were you ready? Did you have to give up a job and walk away, or?
No. Well, I guess it was a surprise. I don't really remember. I know the company commander called me and said he wanted me to come down to the armory. I went down there. I was the company clerk, and he handed me a army order and says, "Take care of this." It was our activation order. Back in those days, the officers didn't do anything. The first sergeant run the company. The officers went to tea and played golf and so forth. They didn't do anything. First sergeant absolutely run the company. So I called the first sergeant. He came in, and we figured out what the order meant, and so we took the appropriate steps.
When you saw the message, did you do a double take? Did you read it twice, or did you say, "Oh my gosh," or?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I
Just did your job and.
Yeah, did
Okay.
what we were supposed to do.
How long did you have from the time you got the order to you shipped out of?
10 days.
10 days. Get everything in order and leave.
Yep.
All right.
Get all our equipment ready. Get everybody in uniform and get them down to the train station.
Train station. You rode a train down there.
Oh yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I digress just a minute. Back to you were down guarding the waterworks, guarding the bridge. How long did you do that?
Well, I don't. Let's see. Till September.
September. Okay, so you were. This was from December of 41 to September of 42.
No, that's not right. No, till January 42.
January 42. We had declared war on Germany and Japan, and then what'd you do in January of 42?
We were shipped to Fort Dix.
Again by train.
By train, the entire division, and we set up camp in the parade ground, and of course it snowed. Our mission, we put sergeants in 6x6 trucks. The 44th Division was stationed there at Dix. Half of them were over the hill.
Old, you mean?
Huh?
Old over the hill. What do you mean over the hill?
AWL.
AWOL.
Yeah. So we put soldiers in a truck and send them to a town with a list of these guys' addresses and police them up and bring them back under guard, put them in the train, MPs on each end. And we did that for about a week till we got that train full of these 44th Division guys, and then the train went to Fort Lewis.
Why were there so many AWOL?
I don't know.
I've never heard of it. I'll be darned.
They all had those funny Eastern names, and
All right.
we had a hell of a time.
You got them all gathered up. You went to Fort Lewis. Were they
They
under?
went to Fort Lewis.
They did.
Yeah.
Were they were under arrest?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just put them on that train.
All right.
And
And then
then
what did you do after you got them all gathered up?
we moved into the Fort Dix itself. We only stayed there till a month and a half. February the 15th, we left New York for Ireland.
Well, being typical military, there were a lot of rumors you heard during that month of where you were going and what you were going to do. Is that right?
Well, not really. We
No?
were so darn busy taking care of things, we never heard anything.
There were a lot of draftees coming in at that time.
No, our division was full.
It was full, so you
Yeah.
didn't have anything to do with the new guys and
No.
all the volunteers. All right.
No.
Okay, you went to Ireland. What was the name of the ship you went on? Do you remember?
Duchess of Aho.
Duchess of Aho.
It was a small yacht that had been converted. It handled just our company.
How many men would that have been at this time? About
200.
200.
Just our company was
All
on
right.
that one ship.
Did you go in convoy? Go by yourself?
Well, went in convoy.
How many ships in the convoy?
Oh, probably 50, 60.
Were you concerned about the German?
Oh, yeah.
Submarines?
We'd stand out on the deck in the night and with our May-West on and see a ship get sunk by a submarine.
You'd see them blow up and get sunk,
Oh, yeah.
and knew it might be you.
Yeah, and it was cold and wet and miserable.
Yeah.
Miserable.
How many ships do you think you lost going over to Kenya?
I
Don't have any idea.
Probably 2 or 3.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And nobody ever stopped to help or anything. Keep on
Well,
going.
you can't stop
No.
the convoy.
All right, you were trained by that time to do what kind of job? Infantry?
I was the first sergeant
First
of an infantry
in the infantry.
company. Yeah.
All right. You safely got to Ireland, and then take us through some of that.
Well, our company was sent to Castle Rock, which is on the beach,
Okay.
and to train. And we just stayed there and trained.
Were the local people glad to see you?
Oh, hell no. All
No.
they'd seen was gangster movies, and they wouldn't let the girls out of the house. And it took us about a month for them to get to realize we were just human beings.
You were pretty nice guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We all heard the stories that the Americans had a lot of money compared to the English and the Irish. Did you guys seem to have a lot of money compared to them? And
Well, nobody got paid much in those days.
right.
And there was nothing to buy over there
Right.
anyway.
Right.
So, no.
All right. While you were there training, what kind of training was it? Assaulting a beach or firing the guns? Or
No,
what?
we just did, map reading and,
What were you reading the maps of? Europe?
yeah.
Okay.
Just-
Did they give you any hint where you might be going next?
Oh,
at that
no.
time? You were just reading maps and
Oh, yeah.
practicing
We didn't
that.
know what we were doing.
What was you what?
We didn't know what we were doing.
What was the biggest challenge? All your men are from the U.S. and they're over there in a foreign country and not knowing what they were going to do. What was the biggest challenge
The
you had?
biggest challenge was keeping them busy. Now, you remember, I was the first sergeant,
Right.
and the officers were way off living in a house.
Playing golf
Never
and-
seeing us. The only time I ever saw an officer was when I took the morning report to the company commander for signature. That's
Uh-huh.
it.
Did you want to see them?
So, no, not particularly. So my biggest job was keeping the company busy.
Okay. How'd you do that?
Oh, we did all kinds of courses and took walks and hikes and
Were you living in tents?
yeah,
What was the temperature like?
damp,
Damp?
very
Okay.
very damp.
What were your biggest worries? What were you worried about?
Sickness mostly.
Sickness?
Yeah,
Did you have doctors or corpsmen?
yeah.
Okay.
We had
It's typical.
a aid station up the road.
Okay. What about injuries? Any injuries to speak of from
No,
training?
no.
Were you working in coordination with armored divisions or any of that kind of
No,
stuff? It was
no.
all infantry work.
Yeah. Regiment had lesson plans that we followed,
Okay.
and we took a number of force marches, and that mainly to keep the guys in physical condition. That was the big thing.
Did you have any hint of where you might be going or what you might be doing?
No
idea.
none.
Okay. And how long were you there?
I left there in September.
Okay. You said when you were
So we arrived there in March, and I left in September.
You were there 6 months. You said when you were in your hometown, the National Guard, you were a clerk. Well, by this time you were not a clerk.
I was the first sergeant.
First sergeant, infantry, first sergeant.
Yeah.
Okay. Where did you go in September?
I went back to the States. I went to OCS. I went on the Queen Mary, with the survivors of the Dieppe raid.
Okay.
And that
What few there were?
great big old ship, and there was about 2,000 of us on there. And you could walk a day and not find anybody.
By this time, was it painted gray and turned all to military? And
Yeah. It didn't zigzag or anything. It just went straight.
Well, it never had an accompanying escort, did it?
Yeah,
No.
none.
Did that concern you?
No.
No. They went fast. Well, back up a minute. Why? How did you go to OCS? Why? Did they ask you? Did you volunteer? How did you?
No, when we were in Fort Dix, General Fountain, who was the division commander, was to send 15 men to OCS. Well, he was going to send the 15. His personnel director said to send 15 first sergeants because they deserve it. So he called us in and said, I can't spare you. The first chance I get, I'll send you to OCS. So we sent our supernumeraries, which were usually company clerks. So when we got to Ireland at this time, he said, I can afford to send you. So he sent, I think, 13 of us back to OCS.
He was with you in Ireland. Was he a good guy?
Oh, yeah.
He was an all right guy, even though you didn't see him much.
No.
That's probably why he was an all right guy, right? You're on the Queen Mary. You're coming back. Where did you land?
We went to Fort Hamilton, New York. Then we went by train to Camp Croft, and we stayed there for a month. And then we went to Fort Benning, took OCS.
Did you call your family as soon as you got to the States?
Oh, yeah.
Did you get any leave?
Yeah, my wife, I called, I went on leave and I called the girl I married. She was in California, and I sent her a wire from South Carolina. And it took 2 weeks to get there. So when I was in Sioux City on leave, I got a telephone call from her, and I told her I wanted to marry her. So I went back to Camp Croft, which is in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and she came down there, and we got married.
You never mentioned this lady before. She's from Sioux City?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we grew up together.
All right. So she came from California, went to Spartan.
She went back to Sioux City and stayed with my folks, and I went to Benning.
All right. Tell us about OCS a little bit. Was it hard, difficult? Any good times, bad times?
Well, OCS was we were in pretty good shape, but it was rough, especially the weather in Georgia is terrible.
What do you mean terrible? Hot, cold?
Oh, at 6 o'clock in the morning you're sweating.
Yeah.
And but we got through it. The peculiar thing was that when we got through with OCS, the company commander of the OCS company called the first sergeants in, and he said, I'm promoting all of you to master sergeants, giving you a warrant. So after the war, if you want to stay in the Army. And the second thing I want to tell you is I had orders that none of you would fail. And we went through all of this.
Through all of that.
All of this hard work.
Well,
we weren't going to fail to start with.
Well, good for him. That made you work harder.
Yeah.
So you are now, were you a warrant officer or second lieutenant?
Second lieutenant.
Second lieutenant.
Short tail.
Then you, did your attitude change? Up till now, you thought the officers played golf, and now all of a sudden you were one. Was that?
Yeah. Things are changing fast.
Things are changing fast.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got your commission. Where'd you go then?
Went to Fort McClellan, Alabama.
For what? What reason?
The rule was at that time that after you got OCS, you had to stay 90 days in the States before you could be shipped overseas.
What was the reasoning for that?
I don't know.
Just,
that was just the rule. So I was sent to Fort McClellan, Alabama.
Infantry still?
Colored troops, basic training.
Okay, for colored troops. We call them Afro-Americans now, colored troops, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Had a whole regiment of them.
And as a second lieutenant, you would have had some master sergeants that ran the division or regiment, and you Who was your boss? Colonel? Lieutenant Colonel?
I had a battalion commander.
Battalion commander.
Major.
Okay. And you were training the troops as infantrymen.
Yeah, I came in there, and of course, with my record, I was immediately made a company commander. And I had eight of these second lieutenants who all outranked me in the company because we were loaded with second lieutenants.
Right.
They had to stay in the States 90 days.
But you knew what you were doing, and they had no idea.
That's why I was the company commander.
How did that go? Did some of them resent it, or did they care?
Well, that didn't make a hell of a lot of difference to me. I was an old first sergeant, and they knew it.
That's right.
That was the end of that.
And you were preparing these troops for infantry combat?
That was ridiculous. We give them 16 weeks of training.
Right.
They learned to fire every weapon. And then when they left there, they went on the docks to load ships, It was crazy.
What a waste.
Yeah, we spent.
Were all of the commissioned officers white then?
Oh yeah.
Okay. No colored.
No.
Okay.
And we lived separately. Of course.
Right. All right. So you've got 90 days. You were in charge of the regiment. What happened after that?
Oh, I guess I'd been company commander about a week, and the CQ, charge of quarters, come running in my tent and said, we've had a shooting in the company. So I went to the company and I had him bring the other officers, and they had been in the latrine, and one of them had shot one of them. So
one of the troops had shot another troop.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had them fall out the company and put them at parade rest, and I had these officers go along and feel the end of the rifle to find the hot rifle, and we found it. Turned the guy over to the MP.
So it was a malicious thing. It wasn't an accident. He meant to shoot the guy.
He shot him.
Kill him?
Yeah. Better than a doornail.
So you got the MPs.
And turned him over to the MPs, and they took it from there. I made out a report, took it to battalion. They sent me to regiment. I got up to Colonel Fry, and he said, I looked at your record. He said, I don't understand why they made you a second lieutenant. They should have commissioned you as a captain. He said, I'm going to do something about that. So I was a second lieutenant 5 weeks.
And then what were you? Captain?
First lieutenant.
First lieutenant.
Yeah, you have to go up.
So you outranked all the second lieutenants now.
By that time, I was off.
Okay.
Off to Europe again.
All right. Off to Europe. What does that mean? Where were you going? How'd you get there?
I went to Camp Miles Standish, Massachusetts. And I went...
Oh, again by train. Everything by train.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
And I went from there, Boston, to Liverpool.
On what ship?
On my ship. Then I went from Liverpool. I was flown into France, and I joined the third division in France.
What year that would have been?
August of 44.
44. Okay. Whereabouts in France? Do you remember?
Well, we were in the northern sector. I can't tell you exactly.
All right. Was this back with your old group?
Oh, no, I didn't know any of them. I went in there as a company commander, Cole. We fought through France, northern France, so we got up to Strasbourg. And then we held up for 2 or 3 days because they wanted the French to take Strasbourg. And so then they put us in trucks and shipped us south. And our whole division joined the 1st French Army north of Colmar.
Okay, let me back up just a little bit. You get over there, you're a first lieutenant, you've got some experience, but you haven't been shot at yet. They put you in, give you a company of guys that have had some experience at being shot at.
Oh, yeah.
How did that go?
No problem.
No problem?
No.
Had some good sergeants that ran the thing?
Oh, yeah.
All right. How many men would you have had responsibility for?
A couple hundred.
Couple of hundred. You integrated well with them, and
yeah, no problem.
Can you remember the first time you were shot at in real danger?
I think the day I arrived.
Is that right?
They were attacking a small town,
Okay,
Yeah.
you were attacking a small town, and other people, the Germans, were
Yeah.
shooting at you.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you thought? Like, holy cow, or
You don't have time to think.
you just do it?
You do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carrying everything you owned on your back, and
Yeah.
all right.
I had a Sergeant Dunham who was the first sergeant who was a real soldier.
Yeah.
And
Did you stay with him the whole time?
well, yeah, I recommended him on one action. I recommended him for the Medal of Honor, and he got it.
He did get it.
Oh yes.
Well, wonderful. Good.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Were your losses heavy at this time?
That's it.
Were your losses of men heavy at this time?
No, we didn't. Actually, we didn't lose too many men. We lost one here and there.
Were you the guy that had to write the letter home to their mom
Oh,
or their
yeah.
wife?
Yeah.
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 I'm sure it was not a pleasant task, was it?
No.
What time of year was it? Spring, fall? I think you said fall.
This was in the winter. Yeah, this was September, October. It was cold.
It was cold.
Snow. We fought through forests, and then we'd come on a town. We'd take the town. Of course, coordinated attacks, you know. And then we'd be back in the forest.
Did you have adequate clothing for the cold?
Well, the top clothing was all right. The shoes were terrible.
Yeah.
The boots were terrible. The boots were not waterproof. They were just regular GI boots, and of course, that was...
Well, at that time, we just didn't have anything, did
That's
we?
right.
That's what it was.
Right.
Yeah. How did you get chow? How'd you get food? How'd you get fed?
We used K rations most all the time. Once in a while, we'd stop, and the kitchen would catch up with us and
Okay.
get a hot meal. But
I'm going to ask you some simple, silly questions, but how did you get K rations? You can only carry so many, and you're out of something. Where did those come from?
They come up with the ammunition.
Okay, somebody had to bring them up with the ammunition,
yeah,
and
quartermaster brings
quartermaster,
them.
and you were stopped somewhere, and somebody would catch up with you. And
That's right.
was that also how you got mail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not very often, but we got some.
And your new wife that she wrote often, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. How often did you write?
Oh, I don't remember.
Don't remember. Well, you see some stories a guy writes every day or something, but
We didn't have any. We didn't have any time. A lot of people don't realize that at that time, if you were in combat, there was no night. There was no sleeping time.
expand on that.
Well, you were, if you were attacking, period, day and night. And at night you might slow down, but half of your unit had to be on alert. So that meant a few of you get a little sleep.
Right.
And then, of course, when dawn came, you were back in the attack.
In attacking mode.
One of the biggest factors was fatigue.
Right.
As a company commander, there was 2 or 3 days at a time that I didn't get any sleep.
Did you have contact with the local civilians as you went through these towns?
Yeah, but as little as possible.
Because they didn't want to, or you didn't want to bother?
No, because it disrupts the troops.
Right.
We don't need troops getting flowers and drinking wine.
Well, that's exactly the reason I ask, because we see a lot of pictures. They're handing us flowers, handing you guys flowers.
That's
you don't want anything to do with
much propaganda.
Yeah.
Most of them are hiding.
Right. Were there any of the towns that you went through that were left in any kind of decent condition, or were they all just rubble?
Some of the towns up south of Strasbourg weren't too badly hit. The bombers hit the cities.
Right. Did you get much air support?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of fighters?
We got those P-47s.
Okay. Thunderbolt gave you a lot of ground support?
There's 2 sides to that air support. It's great for them to be shooting the Germans. But when they are coming down and they're firing, those 50 caliber shells are coming down like rain.
Is that right? Right over you?
You stand straight up because they go pink, pink, pink off of your helmet.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, and they're hot.
Still hot, even though they're coming
they
down
hit you on
a couple
the arm.
hundred feet.
They hit you on the arm. You're wounded.
Was there much anti-aircraft fire? Were the Germans shooting at them? Did you see some get hit and bail out? No,
we didn't see anything.
Didn't have any.
Where we were at, there wasn't any big city.
What was the worst part of the whole thing? Is there anything that stands out?
Well, in retrospect, the worst part was all of the Germans that we killed. That that was stupid.
I mean, you didn't have to kill them, or the whole war was stupid, or what do you mean?
They were stupid. One day we were coming down a hill, and there was a bunch of Germans in a ditch firing at us. So we backed off and brought up our mortars. And of course, I had an interpreter, German speaking, and I told them to surrender. Surrender, we're going to blow you out of the ditch. And they wouldn't surrender. And so we put mortar fire down there, and there's 35 young Germans that died for nothing. And that's the ridiculous part.
It's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. And it works both ways,
Oh, yes.
Terrible ways.
Yes, absolutely.
This may seem a silly question, but were there any humorous moments in all of this?
I don't remember.
Don't remember any, nothing that...
we weren't very happy.
Not very happy at all. Living conditions, did you dig a foxhole every night, or did you?
No, the ground was frozen. We never got around to that. We were always on the attack.
Yeah. You had to sleep sometime, even though it was every 2 or 3 days. Where did you sleep?
We'd sleep at night right on the ground.
Just lay on the ground?
I'd put out all my outposts, and we just, wherever we could find a place to lay.
What'd you lay on? Poncho or your overcoat?
Ponchos.
Poncho.
And once in a while we'd stop in a town, and when we did, we'd put out our outposts, and then we'd sleep in the houses.
Did you have total confidence in all your guys on the outpost that they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
they knew.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How did you assign who? Well, you probably didn't. Who assigned who goes on the outpost that night?
I did. But
you did.
It was a rotation.
You rotated it.
Yeah.
How many men do you think you were losing at that time?
I don't know.
Don't know?
Don't
have any idea. Anything else about the living conditions at that time? Just pure hell, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just did it and had to do it.
That's about it.
Yeah. How often did you get a break away from the front where you could go to the back and clean up and rest?
We didn't get any break yet. The biggest break we got was when they put us in those trucks and took us to Colmar. When we got down north of Colmar, we had a break. We got showers and clean clothes and so forth.
How long was it between showers? Weeks. How many weeks?
I think the first shower I had after I got there was when I went down to Colmar. And I don't know, let's see, when the hell I went to Colmar. I don't know.
Several weeks?
Oh, yeah.
All right, you got new clothing. Did you get brand new clothing or recycled clothing?
I don't.
You don't remember? Just nice to...
That was in January, and we started our attack in August. So
several months.
A few months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness. Did in regards to prisoners you may have captured, what'd you do with them, or how did they get sent to the back, or how did you feed them?
I don't really know.
Yes.
We took 2 prisoners up south of Strasbourg, and we just turned them over and sent them back
to somebody.
Then when we were at Kaiserberg, we made, I took one platoon of my company, and we made a raid on a ridge, and we captured 22 prisoners. And we just sent them back. I don't know. One of the sons of one of those prisoners called me from Germany and said that his dad was 18 years old when I captured him.
How long ago was that when they called you?
About a year.
Is that right? Was his dad still alive?
His dad was still alive, and he was a burgomaster And I asked this lieutenant, he was a lieutenant in the reserve in Germany, and I said, how come you speak such good English? And he said, oh, we take it in high school, and besides that, I work for Citicorp.
I'll be darned. How in the world did an 18-year-old German prisoner of war remember your name? And that's amazing.
There was some kind of article written, and they got a hold of it. It was written by the young fellow that was medic in my company.
Yeah.
And he took a trip to Germany. His name's Bott, Larry Bott, lives in Columbus, Ohio. He went back there and they
I'll be darned.
found out who his company commander was.
I'll be darned. That's interesting. I'll bet you were surprised to get that phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got another one from somebody that was doing the history on the prison camp I was in.
Yeah.
He wanted to know some things.
Well, now you just said you were in a prison camp. Were you a POW?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, take us from. You said you went to Kleinsburg. Is that right?
Colmar.
Colmar. Take us from there down to the time you were captured.
Well, when we got down to Colmar, we were in the center of the 1st French Army. And our job was to capture Colmar, which was on the Rhine River. So Company I, which I commanded, and Company K, which I can't think of his name, commanded, we were the lead companies. And we had 2 platoons forward and 1 back. And we attacked Colmar, and we got in the city. And the Germans immediately counterattacked, and they surrounded us with 6 Tiger tanks and a whole bunch of troops. And
I'm sorry, but how many of you were there?
There was 2 platoons in my company.
How many is that?
About 100.
Okay.
And so I could see what was going on, and I issued the standard command, each man for himself, to my platoon leaders, who passed it on down. And I was standing behind a wall, about an 8-foot wall, thick wall, with my radio man trying to get a hold of battalion to get some artillery or tanks or aircraft or something. And one of the tanks fired and hit that wall and knocked it over and killed my radio man and, of course, banged me up pretty bad. But anyway, the Germans were all over us.
Yeah.
And they captured both 4 platoons, 2 of mine and 2 of K's.
So there'd have been about 200 men captured.
Yeah, probably. Probably 20-30% killed. I don't know.
Yeah. So you're captured. Were you physically able to stand up at that time?
Well, the Germans dug me out, stood me up. Of course, they saw I was an officer.
Right.
That's prize. So
by this time you're a first lieutenant still.
Yeah, still a first
Okay.
lieutenant.
How old were you?
25.
25. How old were the guys on the average in your platoon?
Oh hell, they were all younger. than I was.
18, 19.
Yeah.
Okay, here's if you'll let me take you through this. You're surrounded. You surrender. They obviously take all your weapons.
Yeah.
Then what happened?
They took. And I can't think of his name. Anyway, the lieutenant and they mistook my medic for an officer because he had a cross on his helmet. They thought he was a doctor. So they took the 3 of us down and interrogated us, and of course we didn't tell them anything.
Right.
And they took us across the river and put us on a train and shipped us.
Now let me ask you this, and this may sound a silly question, but were you afraid? Were you concerned to your life? Did you think, or were you pretty comfortable that they were going to treat you all right? Or?
Well, when you're in combat, you're concerned about your
Well,
life
that's,
every minute.
well, I know that, but I mean,
Yeah, well, sure.
yeah,
You don't know what's going to happen. You just take it minute by minute.
right. You actually got on a train, and they were running trains right there at the front of the, or fairly close to the front line.
Put all the prisoners on a train
Okay.
and headed us north.
Do you know, was that train marked in any way that this was POW, so you wouldn't get strafed by our own? So
No, when we were halfway to Hammelburg, a P-47 came along and took out the engine. At that time, the Air Force was just taking out the engine. They weren't bombing the train.
yeah,
Unless they could see weapons or tanks on it.
right.
So they took out and didn't do us any favors because it was January and it was cold as hell and we had to sit there an extra day till they got another engine on it.
Yeah. How many people in your car? Were you in a
They went
coach car, box car?
boxcar.
Boxcars.
It was real funny. They crowded all of the enlisted men in the boxcars and they put 3 of us in one boxcar. A French lieutenant and I and Calvert's his name, Lieutenant Calvert. Put the 3 of us in the boxcar, which was a real boon because it was so cold and we could walk up and down this boxcar and keep from freezing to
moving a
death.
little bit. Yeah.
Those poor enlisted men all jammed in one, they couldn't move much.
Right. How long were you on the train?
I think about 3 days.
Headed
North.
north. Okay. Getting colder all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Did you get any food?
Oh, heavens, no.
No, no food for 3 days.
Nothing.
No. All right. You 3 days later, where were you at that time?
We were in Hammelburg,
Hammelburg.
and that was Hammelburg was divided into 3 sections. One for officers. There was a lot of Air Force officers, of course, that got shot down. And one section for enlisted and one section for the Serbians. Now, a lot of people don't realize that Croatia joined the Nazis. And they policed up all the Serbian army. And they had it all in that prison camp.
Okay.
Probably 10,000.
It was a mix of infantry and Air Force.
Oh, yeah.
Would that have been called a Luft, L-U-F-T, Luft, or just is that strictly for Air Force guys?
That's for Air Force.
Air Force.
Auflag is for officers. Hammelburg was Stalag, which is both of them.
And did they keep the officers and the enlisted separated in the prison camp?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And Patton's son-in-law was there with us.
I'd heard he was captured.
Oh, yeah.
Technically, I think by the Geneva Convention, the officers and sergeants aren't supposed to work. Who did the work in the officers' prison camp? The cooking and that kind of thing, or did you do your own?
There wasn't any cooking. What are you talking about?
What'd you eat?
You're thinking about Hogan's Hero.
Well, I might be, but how did you eat?
That has nothing to do with it.
Okay, well, that's why I'm asking. How did you eat?
About every day, the Germans would come with a big, how we doing? With a big bowl
Go ahead, keep going.
of soup. There's a big beet they grow in Germany that they feed to the cattle. They would take that big beet and cut it up and put it in a big vat of water and boil it. And that's what we got to eat.
Once a day?
Yeah.
Yeah, once a
And
day.
there was worms and everything.
That was your protein.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And once in a while we got a Red Cross package and we'd split it among 8 of us. And have you ever tried to split an M&M with a razor blade? Well, that's what we did.
Yeah.
Get a half of M&M.
Cigarettes in the package, Red Cross?
I always traded my cigarettes for vitamin pills because
Yeah.
I didn't smoke.
Good idea. When you got there, did you know any of the people that were there?
Just Calvert.
Calvert, who was with you
Yeah.
at the time. Yeah.
No, I met, they had a listed man doing some work in the street, and I recognized him. His name was Wolf, and he was in my National Guard company, 34th Division, and he was captured in Africa. He'd been a prisoner for 4 years.
All the way from Africa to northern Germany.
Yeah.
All right. That was in early 1940. No, late
Early
44?
1945.
1945. How long were you a prisoner of war?
I was a prisoner of war from the 24th of January to the 4th of May.
In that time, could you tell that the tide was turning, things were going better for the Americans? Did that concern you or please you, or
What, when we were prisoners?
yes, or did you have any idea what was going on?
We didn't have any idea what was going on. Again, you're thinking of Hogan Heroes.
How did on May the 4th? Was that your Liberation Day?
Yeah.
How did you find out you were liberated if you weren't getting any news?
Well, when we were at Hammelburg, I don't know whether you've ever seen it on TV. They call it Patton's Big Mistake.
I've heard of it.
Okay, Patton sent those guys in. That was Hammelburg. That's where I was at when Patton sent that task force in there to free us.
Uh-huh.
See, of course they didn't have enough gas to get back,
Yeah.
and they were undermanned, undergunned. Well, when they attacked us, 2 lieutenants and I took off on foot and went south to the main river.
How far was that?
A few miles. I don't know.
Okay. So you're on foot. Were you on a road in the forest?
Oh no, we followed the main river west, and we traveled at night, and we hid in the daytime.
What time of year was this? April, May? I'm saying it was,
April.
okay, so it was still cold and damp.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
3 of you. Did you
Yeah.
run into any civilians?
No.
Didn't see any.
Oh
So
hell no, we stayed out of sight.
okay. How far did you get?
Well, the Brom task force that attacked Hammelburg, when they were going back to join the American lines, they got stopped. They got ambushed, and all their tanks got knocked out and everything. So we had been traveling along the main river, and I think it was the 4th day, night, and we were at night. It just turned dark, and we saw this big American tank sitting there, and we thought, we got it made. So we went up to that tank, and of course, the tank had been knocked out. The Germans were there, and they recaptured us and took us back to the line. Well, at that time, they were evacuating Hammelburg. They were marching everybody south to Moosburg. So they put us in that column.
Did they
south.
treat you any worse because you were escaped prisoners, or did they just throw you back in and say, get in there?
Just threw us back in line.
Yeah. That was May the 4th or 6th or something of May, 1940.
No, this is April.
April, okay.
Yeah.
And then you, how long were you being evacuated south?
Well, we marched, and when we got down near Nuremberg, they said we could go to the farmhouse 6 at a time and get some water. So 6 of us went down there, and I told one of the lieutenants next to me, I said, we can get the hell out of here. If we can just get over to that building, we can go up that hill, and we can get the hell out of here. So we did. Well, we didn't realize there was a flak tower about 200 yards to our left on the top of that hill. So as we're going up the hill, that son of a bitch up there fires at us. And of course he hit me, naturally. And I went down like a pile of bricks, and the guard saw us and come up.
Where was the wound?
In the face.
In the face.
Yeah. So they placed us up, put us back in the line.
At that point, didn't care if you tried to escape or not, huh? Yeah. Yeah.
They weren't going to let us escape, so
So you,
put us back in the line, and we marched on down to Mooseburg.
all right. I'll tell you what, we're about out of time, Dar. Why don't we close at this point and schedule another day? Is that all right with you?
Yeah.
This is Mooseburg, MOS. We'll schedule again for the next time, Dar.
We'll go to Korea.
All right.
Sure.
Good morning. Today is February the 7th, 2008. We are again privileged to be with Dar Walker, who we interviewed last week. Dar, I think last week we left off, you had been a POW and had escaped the second time and had been convinced by another fellow, maybe a sergeant, to be best to surrender again or give yourself up to the Germans. And let's take it from that point. Is that right? That about right?
Well, if it was the second time that I escaped, it was at a town named Margaretenton, Germany, and the guards let us go get some water. So 5 or 6 of us went to get some water, and I said to Lieutenant Themey, who was with me, I said, you know, they're not watching us very close. We could get the hell out of here. So he and I run around behind a barn and up a hill. We didn't realize it, but there was a flak tower up there, and of course one of the guards up there saw us, and he fired around, and it hit me in the face, and of course I went down, and so Themey and I both put our hands up and went back to the column, and he patched me up, and we marched on down towards Moose.
Apparently, I guess maybe all wounds are serious, but it wasn't that serious enough a wound that it incapacitated.
The shell went right under my nose.
Goodness
and
gracious.
through my lips. I bled like a stuck pig, but I wasn't dead.
What time of year was it? What year was this, and what time of year?
Well, this was, if I remember right, this was right after Roosevelt died.
So maybe April of 45.
Yeah, he died in April 12th.
And we were 6 weeks or so away from the war being over.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you...
I think it was after he died.
All right.
Probably a few days.
And you went back to this column. Do you have any idea how many prisoners there were in the column?
No. There was 2 or 3 columns that they marched from Hammelburg south to Mooseburg.
Okay, you were headed south to Mooseburg.
Yeah.
How long were you in that column, and how long did you march south at this point?
I don't really know.
Don't remember.
I remember one night we always stopped at night and just laid down. Of course, we didn't get any food, but one night we stopped and we were short of Nuremberg.
Okay.
Probably a couple miles, and we stopped at a railroad yard. And during the night, they bombed Nuremberg with lots and lots of planes.
Right.
And the bomb shook the ground where we were.
And you could hear them.
Oh, God, could you hear them?
Could you hear the airplanes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of racket.
Was there flak at that point, or had they run out of it? There was still flak?
There was flak, yeah.
Yeah. Well, talk about that a minute. When you... Two questions come up with that. When you were in combat before you were captured, was there any aircraft activity overhead all the time, or part time?
No, we had some air support with P-47s.
Okay.
The problem with that was that when they come in and give us air support, they fired those 50 caliber machine guns, and those shells came down. So you had to stand straight up so they'd ping over your helmet.
You mentioned that, and they would come raining down on you.
Yeah.
Okay. Then let's progress on to where you were towards the end of the war, and you were still a POW outside of Nuremberg. Was Was there activity every night in the air?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. I think the British were bombing at night, the Americans in the day.
Yeah.
When you were marching in the daytime, did you see aircraft activity?
I don't remember.
Don't remember? Okay. So after you stopped outside of Nuremberg on the rail yard, take it from there.
Well, we moved on. We marched on down to Moosburg, and Moosburg was a regular prison camp, and they just shoved us in there, and we didn't have any food, and there was an awful lot of us, and so after a certain length of time, we had Colonel Waters was the senior guy, and we got a feeling that something was happening because some of the guards were disappearing. So Colonel Waters called the captain and myself and Themey and Lieutenant Themey and another lieutenant. He said, "No, I think the Americans are coming. We don't really know, but I want you." There was two guard towers or two guard houses at the gate. He said, "I want you, two of you, to take one guardhouse and two of you to take the other guardhouse if the Americans arrive, and secure the gate." Well, we were the gate crew. So sure enough, here come a half-track and
an American half-track with Americans.
Yeah.
Was there any shooting that led into this, or all it just appears?
No shooting at all. And a Jeep. And standing up in that half-track was old Patton. And he pulled up to that gate. And of course, by that time, all the guards had taken off.
You're in Moosburg.
At Moosburg.
Okay.
Except one. There was one in one of those sheds, the other one, not the one that Timmy and I went in. Well, they got him. They rassled him, took his weapon away. And we opened the gate and went out and stood there. And old Patton said, "My God, there's a lot of you." And we said, "Yeah, there's quite a few." The captain did. And he said, "Have you got anything? Have the Germans got anything for you to eat here?" He said, "I know you guys are skinny." And he said, "Well, the only thing is there's a shed down on the end of the camp that's full of Red Cross packages." And he said, "We can't, the Germans wouldn't give them to us." And Patton said, "Well, you can take those." And he said, I'll get some MPs up here and we'll get some transportation for you and we'll get something done." And there was a little guy, had the German standing beside us, and there was a little guy in a black suit. And he said, "General," he said, those Red Cross packages belong to the International Red Cross. And he said, "You have liberated this camp, so you can't take those." And Patton said to one of the guys in the Jeep, he said, "Give the captain a rifle." So he threw him a rifle. And Patton said, "Now, Captain, the next word that guy says, I want you to shoot him right between the eyes. You understand that?" And he said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, that's an order." And he said, "You go down there and get those Red Cross packages."
Who was the guy in the black suit with?
He was Swiss.
Swiss with the Red
Swiss
Cross.
International Red Cross. Yeah.
But apparently was traveling with the group, with Patton's group or somebody, or
No, he was with the Germans.
Oh.
He was with the Germans. He was there to supervise something for the Germans. Yeah. So anyway, then we went and got all those Red Cross packages, and there was about 3 to a person. We lined up, and they gave us one. You just kept lining up. And, of course, everybody got them and sat down and started eating them right away because we were hungry. So then the night came, and we just slept. We were told to stay right there. And the next morning we got up, and they called everybody out in the middle. So we all got out in the middle.
I'm sorry, but did some Americans hang around, troops?
Huh?
Did American soldiers, troops stay around?
No, we never got any troops.
Off they went.
No, yeah, Patton left. Only one was Patton. And so we just stayed there. And the next morning we all got out there. And Colonel Waters said, now, this man is a burgomaster of Mooseburg, the city, the town. And he said the Russians are coming through here. And he would like some of you to go in and live in the houses, stay in the houses till we get transportation to get you out of here. Because those Russians are terrible people. So a bunch of us did. Well, Themey and I went. A whole bunch of us went in. Mark just walked into town, and the burgomaster put us in the houses.
Were there people living there?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Just women. So Themey and I, we went in this one house, and there was a mother and a daughter about 10 or 12 years old, and she got out some bread, and we got out our Red Cross packages, and we all sat around. They ate our Red Cross packages, and Themey spoke German.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, he was in the 1936 Olympics. He was a big guy.
Okay.
And so we were just visiting, and about, I guess, 7, 8 o'clock at night, there was a big rap on the door. And, of course, Themey went to the door, and he opened the door, and the Russian soldier said, "Hey, Americana." And Themey said, "You better believe it, baby."
Good.
And they left.
Yeah.
And the next morning, they came through the town with a loudspeaker and said, "All PWs go to the center of Mooseburg." So
who said that? The Russians or the Americans?
No, Americans.
Americans called you. Okay.
Yeah, Russians were gone. I don't know where they went. They came and gone. And so we went to center of town, and they marched us south, and there was an airfield. And we got about, I guess it was about 400 or 500 yards south of town, not very far.
Yeah.
And we got near that airfield, and you can look up in the air, and there must have been 100 or 200 C-46s coming in.
Yeah.
And they landed, and they put us on those planes and flew us to Camp Lucky Strike in France.
Can you tell me what your feelings, what you were thinking 2 days before you were a prisoner of war, and 2 days from then you're free and you're walking around the town, and what kind of emotions did you have?
Well, your big emotions are eating. We hadn't eaten for months.
Yeah.
That was the big emotion.
Okay.
And getting home,
Yeah.
just like everybody else.
Let me ask you this house you went into, this lady and this daughter, they were Germans.
Yeah.
And you say there were no men there. They probably had men in the service or had lost them. Was the German lady afraid? Afraid of you guys, or was she?
No,
she was friendly enough, and
no, she wasn't afraid of us.
Okay.
No, the burgomaster explained it to her.
Okay.
Yeah, that was no problem.
And probably relief because of what the Russians might have done had they come in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just, at that time, taking it one day at a time, just hoping we'd get the hell out of there.
Okay, you're on the C-46, and you go to Camp Lucky Strike, which was. Take a minute and explain Lucky Strike.
Well, Lucky Strike was someplace in the middle of France, and it had been a replacement depot, and they had a whole flock of 16-man tents with wood floors and so forth, and they put us all in those tents.
Was the war over?
Yeah.
The war was over. Okay, yeah. You get off your airplane, you go to Lucky Strike. Did you go somewhere and they took all your clothing away? And
no.
Okay, you were still in your...
When we got to Lucky Strike, we all had lice.
Right.
So the first thing they did was they run us through this, where they spray this powder on you, and then you take a shower. Then you come back and they spray the powder on you again because we were all full.
When your clothing's off somewhere in a heap.
Oh yeah, they took
Okay,
all
so you're
it.
going to have new uniforms, what I'm trying to get to. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we got rid of all these lice because we had them around the waist particularly and in the hair. And then they got us all cleaned up and put us in these tents.
Did you have any personal possessions that meant anything to you?
We didn't have anything.
Nothing, just the clothing and that's it.
Whatever they gave us.
Okay.
Then
Go ahead.
in the middle of that compound, they put a big tent and put a lot of candy and stuff out. And the first day, one of the ex-prisoners ate too much candy and died.
Yeah.
So that disappeared, and they put out cake and cookies and stuff, but weren't high in sugar because that was a big mistake.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were there, and we were to get processed, and then moved to the States.
Did you have your dog tags?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't.
I'm just the reason asking is they just would take your word for who you were, your name, and.
I don't know.
Okay.
We had our dog.
All right, go ahead.
But anyway, Themey went and they interviewed him, and then I was the next one. They did it by where you were in the camp, and I went in and they interviewed me, asked me where I was from and all this kind of stuff, and told me that I had 2 Purple Hearts, 3 Bronze Stars, Croix de Guerre, Silver Star, and so forth awarded to me, and that when I got back to the States, that would be.
Well, how did they know? How did they have the paperwork there for everybody? Amazing.
No, they didn't have the paperwork. I think Themey told them.
Okay.
Because he went in there before I did, and I think he told them.
All right. I was
He was quite a guy. But anyway.
Have you kept contact with Themey over the years?
No, I lost contact with him. I dissed him out in Denver in 1967, and then I lost contact with him. But so then,
where do you go from Lucky Strike?
well, I was called one day. No, we were a whole bunch of us were all loaded up on trucks, and a major come along and said, "Where's Lieutenant Walker?" And I jumped down. I said, "Right here." And he said, "Well, you're going to be the troop commander on a Liberty ship taking a load of prisoners back to the States." And I said, "Fine." So we went down, got on this Liberty ship, and I was troop commander, and I called on the captain the first thing. And we had a little discussion, and I had 5 full Colonel Air Force aces on that ship. But I was a senior line officer. Hard to believe.
Yeah.
Big
What
old
rank were you?
First lieutenant.
First
Big old
lieutenant.
First lieutenant.
Okay.
Senior line officer.
Senior line officer. My gosh.
So I got all the troops together and told them there'd be no fighting. Anybody that caught fighting, we're going to throw them overboard. And there'd be no gambling. Nobody had any money. So then we were on this dumb ship waiting to go, and so we slept and we ate the next morning, and I went up to the captain. I said, "When are we leaving?" He said, "Well, we got a problem. We got all that gear down there on the dock, and it has to be loaded, and the French want more money." So I went back.
We just saved their butts, and then they want more money.
Yeah, I went back and found a first sergeant, and I said, and Themey, and I said, "I'm going to need some help here. We got to go get somebody to load that." So we're standing there on the ship, and we look out, and there's MPs moving German prisoners. And I said, "There's our answer." So Themey and that sergeant went up and relieved those MPs and took those German prisoners. And Themey, who spoke German, brought them back, and he told them that they had a half an hour to load that, otherwise they'd all be shot. And so we got our stuff loaded.
And they believed you.
Evidently.
Yeah.
We got all our stuff loaded and turned them back to the MPs and
Good.
took off.
Let me ask you this: you're all full of POWs, new uniforms. Did you have any rank on you? Any rank insignia or anything? Patches or anything? Or was
they gave us rank.
You had rank, so
yeah, they gave us rank.
Lieutenants and sergeants would be identifiable as okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. You get on the what was the name of the Liberty ship?
Oh God, I don't remember.
All right. How long did it take you to get back to the U.S.?
3 weeks, I believe.
3 weeks. Bad trip? Good trip? So.
It was a good trip because we were going home.
You were going home.
Nobody cared about anything.
Were you able to send a message back to the U.S. where I'm coming home?
They notified all our relatives,
yeah. At what point, I saw a piece of literature, a newspaper article that you were missing in action. At what point did your family find out you were a POW?
Well, my wife, who was in Sioux City, Iowa, got a telegram. I don't know when.
Yeah.
Gave all that stuff to my son.
Did you get any correspondence from her while you were in prison camp?
No.
Okay. You're on the Liberty ship. You came back to where?
We came back to Fort Hamilton, New York. And they unloaded us, and they put us in a mess hall. And the general came in and said, now, you can have any kind of food you want, anything you want. If we don't have it, this is New York City, we'll get it. So we all ordered and ate, and then he got back up and said, now, is there anything else we can do? Well, I was the troop commander, so I figured it was my place to tell him, so I stood up and said, we don't have any money. He said, he told us before that he was going to have a bus, a number of buses, and it would take us into Times Square, and there'd be a bus where they let us out all the time to bring us back whenever we wanted to go and come back. And
how far were you from New York City?
Oh, Fort Hamilton's right in New York.
Okay, didn't know.
Yeah.
All right.
And probably a mile or two from Times Square.
All right.
So I stood up and told him, I said, you're being extremely kind, but we don't have any money. And he turned to one of his officers and said, get the paymaster down here right away. So they gave us a couple $100
a piece,
which was a lot of room,
pay.
Yeah. And we went in, Themey and I and a couple other lieutenants went into town. We went in a restaurant. Now, you got to remember, all we're thinking about is eating.
Right.
And we went into a restaurant, ordered fried chicken, and we got our fried chicken and was eating, and the waiter come over and said, that gentleman over there paid for your meal.
Great.
So we went over and thanked him.
Great.
And we were wandering around Times Square, 2 o'clock in the morning, nothing to do, and we see a sign, Cab Calloway, 2 o'clock show. So we said, well, we'll go see that. So we went up to the window, and of course they wouldn't take any money, and we went up on the second floor and saw about an hour and a half Cab Calloway show.
Now, do you think the reason they wouldn't take any money, they knew you were returning POWs or just servicemen?
Just servicemen.
Good.
Just servicemen.
Dar, I tell you what, I want to explore this more, but we better move on. If we have any time, I'll go back to some of this. All right, you're at some point released from Fort Hamilton, and you head back to Iowa.
I went to Fort Snelling in Minneapolis,
right,
by train, and was processed, which meant I took a physical and so forth. Then I took a train to Sioux City, and I believe I had 60 days.
Okay.
Maybe 30, I don't know.
Right.
And then from there, I was ordered to Little Rock, Arkansas. I spent 30 days there, being
organized or whatever. Now, had you decided at that point you were going to stay in the Army?
Well, I didn't know. And when I got through at Fort Little Rock, and this is where they got the general and they presented me my decorations along with other people. And then they sent me to Fort McClellan, Alabama, and I had decided to get out at that time. And there was another captain and I had 28 points. They give you points for time in service and decorations and so forth. And we had the most points, so we got discharged first. Then I went back to Sioux City and I went to work and stayed in the National Guard. Of course, I was immediately promoted to captain. And then on my 30th birthday, I think they promoted me to major. And then I found out, I think I'd been out about a year and a half, 2 years. Then I found out that they, 34th Division, which I was part of, had a space where they could send somebody to command in General Staff College at Leavenworth. So I went to Des Moines, talked to the Chief of Staff, said I'd like to go. He said, okay. So they cut orders for me to go. And I got a letter from the Department of the Army. Said I hadn't had infantry advanced officers course 6 years before, and I'd have to take that first. So I went off to Benning.
So your time in combat doesn't count as an advanced infantry.
No. So I went off to Benning for 3 months, and then I came.
Well, now, I'm sorry, but at this point you decided you were going to be career.
I haven't decided yet.
Okay, but you had a job you could get away from.
Yeah, I was selling real estate.
Okay,
yeah, I could leave. And so then after I got through with that course, I went home for a week, and then I went down to Fort Leavenworth for 4 months. And when I was just about to finish Fort Leavenworth, the Army sent me a letter, said they're recalling me for 2 years for the Korean conflict. And they sent me to Korea.
Okay.
Right out of Leavenworth, I got...
Did you have a family by this time other than the wife?
Yeah, I had a wife and 2 children.
2 children.
And so they give me 15 days leave, and I go to Korea.
Okay. And now you're prepared because you've had the advanced infantry course.
Everything.
Everything. All right. You go to Korea in 1950...
1952.
1952.
Yeah.
You're a major, infantry major. Where did you land, and where did you go after you landed?
Well, when after I got to Korea, I was made battalion commander of the 2nd Battalion of the 279th Infantry of the 45th Division, which was in reserve. And we stayed in reserve for 3 weeks.
What time of year? Cold, warm?
Hell, I don't remember.
All right.
Well, it wasn't warm.
Okay.
Well, anyway.
All right.
We were in reserve for 3 weeks, and then our battalion relieved the battalion that was on Heartbreak Ridge. And
after the major events you hear about Heartbreak Ridge?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we relieved, and Heartbreak Ridge was a hill, or a mountain, a ridge, and you could see for miles. It was very important. And it had a trench all along the top. And so we relieved the troops there, and I had 4 companies on the line, plus the PEFTOC, Filipino Army Company, on my left flank.
How many of the people you had at that time had combat experience?
Oh, God, I don't know.
Well, I mean, would you think, were there a lot of them, or very few, or?
I think there was probably very few.
Very few, all right.
I think there was very few.
So you relieved this major hill with...
So we relieved them. We had, on that ridge, we had a machine gun every 15 yards with 50,000 rounds of ammunition. And the Chinese only attacked at night. So and I don't know why, but they didn't have any artillery. I guess our vision was, we had a forward observer up there, and I think our vision was probably too good. They could knock out their artillery, but we had plenty of artillery. So we had this forward observer up there. So our troops would sleep in the daytime and then they'd be up most of the night. And we had 4 attacks. And they never got in the trenches.
What can you tell me what you're thinking? You've been out of combat for 6 or 7 years, and you're back. Are you thinking, oh my golly, or
no? You don't think anything. You got a job to do.
Just do the job, and
you just do your job.
You weren't thinking I've been here before, and
you got to do your job so you don't lose your people.
Right.
So you get the minimum amount of your people killed.
Okay.
We were on that ridge for 2 months. And I had 4 casualties, period.
Amazing.
And I imagine we killed 1,000, 2,000 Chinese. They'd come running up that hill.
Were they screaming and making noise?
Oh, yeah. And firing their rifles.
You had an M1 at that time yourself?
Yeah.
Well, and what was your job when they're attacking? It's night, they're attacking, the guns are going off. Are you moving around in the trench, or you're?
All you can do is
you're
be up there and take care of your artillery. Now, one attack we had was extremely heavy. Oh God, they just kept coming for like half an hour, and we were firing 155 flares. We'd light that hill up like in daylight with those flares. And the next morning, the attack was over, and we had repelled them, just slaughtered lots of them. And we had a guard station at the bottom of this ridge, and you went up.
A guard station behind the line, or behind the trench?
Yeah.
Okay,
and
behind.
Somebody'd come down there, and then they'd have to come up to see us.
Okay.
So I got a call, and I was laying down, and they called and said, there's a general down at the bottom, wants to see you. And I said, well, send him up. So he come up in his Jeep as far as he could, and he walked up there, and he said, I might have known it was you. He had been chief of staff over Riley in '51 when I was a deputy operations officer at Fort Leonard Wood, and I and the general went over there to see what aid they needed because they were at Camp Function at Fort Riley, and they had that big flood.
Yeah.
And we were going to send engineers over to help them. So I had met him over there. He was the chief of staff then. He was a full colonel. Now he's a general artillery.
You're still a major.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said, I might have known it was you. He said, you have fired half of all of our flares in Korea. And I said, yeah, but they don't have the hill. And he said, yeah, I can see they don't have the hill.
Well, let me ask you this. What happened to the bodies? Did anybody ever move them?
Oh, they'd police them up at night.
Well, they would pick up their own casualties and take them away.
Yep.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Okay, how long were you on the hill?
A lot of them rolled back down. We're talking about a pretty steep hill.
Could you see them Go ahead. Could you see them in the daytime over somewhere?
No.
No.
Don't see a thing in the daytime.
And then
Just
at
at night.
Yeah.
Just at night.
How did the Filipino troops do on your flank?
They never attacked the Filipino troops. They stayed away from them.
Did they know they were there?
Sure.
Apparently.
Oh, sure.
And the Filipinos had a meaner.
No, they're Asians. They're not going to attack their.
That's right. Not going to attack the Asians. No. I'll be darned. All right, you're 2 months on the hill, and then.
Well, then we came off of there, and we went into reserve, and we went, I don't know, quite a ways back into a camp, and I guess I was still commander for about a month, and then Lieutenant Colonel Lind came and took command, and I guess I stayed there probably another month. You got 4 points for being in combat. You needed 28 points in Korea to rotate back to the States. And I had 28 points in 7 months.
Okay.
And
so you rotated back to the States?
No.
No?
I went back to Japan. And what did I do there?
How long were you in?
I went anyway. Oh, okay.
How long total were you in Korea before you rotated?
7 months.
7 months. Okay.
28 points.
All right.
Then I went back to Japan, and I went to Far East Command headquarters and told the personnel director I wanted a job in Japan. And he sent me to a General Collins, who was the G2. And so he gave me an assignment. I was in charge of the operations room, and we put out a top secret document on all of the goings on in Korea. And
so this must have been about mid 1953.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then I had that job for a while, and then they needed a briefing officer to brief the generals, and they made me G2 briefing officer, and I and the operations briefing officer briefed all the dignitaries and generals that came to Tokyo before they went to Korea or wherever they were going.
Still a major.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we made one trip to Yokohama to brief down there. Went by chopper. And I had that job for quite a while. And then I was made Chief of Technical Intelligence for the Far East Command. And the only thing that happened
what does technical intelligence mean?
Well, that has to do with all the technical stuff on airplanes and sonar and radar and all that.
Okay.
Intelligence part. What we learn about the enemy through technology.
All right.
And the only thing that happened during that corps was about 2 o'clock in the morning one morning. I got a call from Korea, and some Chinaman had landed a MiG. And being the Far East Command Technical Intelligence Officer, according to the manual, I was to tell them what to do with it. So I just merely called the Air Force Technical Intelligence people and told them they had an airplane. That took care of that.
All right, let's. I hate to keep moving us on, but this is about 1953 or so, and then.
At 1955, I was assigned as an infantry advisor to the Texas National Guard, and I was there to move it along. I was there till 1958.
Okay.
And nothing happened. I just advised the National Guard. And in 1958, I was transferred to Fort Leonard Wood, and I was deputy G3, deputy operations officer. And in November of '58, I was promoted to a lieutenant colonel.
Okay. You were involved in Vietnam. That correct?
No.
No? Okay.
Then in 1960, I went to a number of schools, a whole bunch of them. But anyway, in 1960, I was sent to Taiwan, embassy duty. And my first job there, I was infantry advisor of the commander-in-chief of the Republic of China Army.
Okay.
And I went to Kinmen Island and Matsu Island and the Dog Islands and surveyed the infantry defenses or the defenses, and then in 1962 I was made comptroller of the Army section of the Military Assistance Group, the National Chinese Army, and then in 1963 I went back to Fort Leonard Wood as Deputy G3 on the General Staff. And 1965 I became Headquarters Commandant at Fort Leonard Wood.
Okay, and what, in the relative hierarchy of the military at a base like Fort Leonard Wood, where does that fall in? You have a commanding general, and then
You have a commanding general, a deputy commanding general, a chief of staff. The headquarters commandant, I was in charge, I was the commander of all troops and units that are not a regular unit. There are brigades, there are regiments, but any unit that's not in a brigade or a regiment come under my command. Military police, the band, the WACs, the general staff, ordnance, quartermaster, and so forth.
all right. So you're commanding officer of that group, that type group of people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long were you there in that capacity?
I was there 1965 to June 1st, 1966, when I retired.
You retired in 1966.
Yep.
You, where did you move after you retired?
I moved to Springfield, Missouri.
And what did you do then?
I got in the real estate business.
And you've been here ever since.
Yep.
All right. Well, Dar, it's certainly been a privilege and quite frankly an honor to talk to you and review with you. For the record, I want to list some items that were awarded by our government to Mr. Walker: the Silver Star, 4 Bronze Star, 3 Purple Heart. Pronounce the French one for me.
Croix de Guerre.
Croix de Guerre. And what's that an equivalent to, Dar?
I don't know.
You don't know, okay.
I don't have any idea.
Okay.
There's 2 types of Croix de Guerre. There's one that's issued to a unit. There's one that's issued to an individual.
And you got the individual?
I think I got both of them.
All right.
I wouldn't bet on it.
We'll put a 2 behind that.
I don't know.
All right. World War II Victory Medal, Korea Service Medal, European Theater 5, Combat Infantry Badge 3, POW Medal, Good Conduct Medal, Army Reserve Medal, American Expedition Forces, Presidential Citations 2, Vietnam War Zone Medal, and the Army Commendation. Dar spent 30 years active duty serving our country, and again, Dar, it's been a privilege to get acquainted with you and to know you, and thank you very much.
You're welcome.